Good evening, everyone. It is Joanne Chestnut. I'm coming back to you live with my 15 minutes of faith, and I wanted to talk to you today about faith. I just wanted to revisit it since we talked about fear yesterday. I wanted to tell you and talk to you about how to overcome fear. We did talk a little bit about it yesterday about prayer and about reading your word. But I just wanted to get in a little bit more detail so that I can make sure that I'm offering solutions to the problem of fear. Because for everything that we can experience, there's a solution from the word in it. Nothing new is under the sun. I know we've all heard our parents and grandparents say that, but the more you read the word and get into it, the more you really do understand that it's true. There's nothing new. Our word is so alive. The word of God is so alive and such a living word that it is there to help you with situations going on right now today. So let's talk a little bit about faith. First, I want to talk about how faith is built. It's not just something that comes overnight. Faith is built on continual reliance on God. That every time you put your hopes, your dreams, your plans, your desires in his hand over and over again, he never leaves nor forsakes you. He comes through for you. He blesses you when you haven't even done what you're supposed to do. He blesses you and comes through for you more than what you could ask for. You ask for 10, he gives you 20. And on top of it, you know that he has grace, that he gives you grace when you hadn't earned it. And he gives you mercy and doesn't give you what you do deserve. So your faith is built on that because only you know some of the things you do in private that God covers. So it helps build your faith when you know that you've done something terribly wrong and now you think that maybe your blessing is going to be out the door, and then you turn around and he blesses you anyway and gives you more than you had anticipated. And this is how faith is built. It's almost like if I was a good friend to you and we had a friendship for the past 15 or 20 years, and every time I asked you for something, perhaps if I asked you to borrow money, and I've done it more than once, and I told you that I'm going to pay you back on Monday, but Sunday night you get a call from me and I say, I have that money you gave me. If you asked me to keep a secret for you and you told me, and you know that you didn't tell anybody else and you never hear it again, you begin to trust me. That relationship of trust develops between you and myself. And that's what your relationship of trust is that builds up with God, is that you begin to seek him and ask him and talk to him. And as time goes by and he reveals himself to you more and more, that's what builds your faith. So I want to look at some passages in the word that talk about trust and talk about the fear that we may experience that God has told us not to fear. So I'm reading right now from Joshua, and this is when they were going to be crossing over to the Jordan and crossing into an unknown territory, and God promised to keep and protect them. And so in Joshua 1, verse 7, it says, Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the laws my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So first, I want to just submit to you that faith that's built up comes from you following God's commands, that you learning his word and knowing the right thing to do. So the only way you could know that is if you begin to read the word. And you won't be basing it off of what you think is the right thing to do. You'll be basing it off what you think God would have you do, because it's going to be spelled out in his word. Again, God has a word for every situation you could face. And the more you get it in your heart and the more you read it and the more you understand, it won't be hard for you to make a decision that's a godly decision and you're covered. Because as you see, when we look at what God did, he promised to always be there for him and to never leave nor forsake him. He did. But along with that promise came some commitment from us. It said, be careful to obey all the law, all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left. So, along with that promise to keep you and protect you, there's a part in it that we have to do. So it's like a contract. You do this and I'll do that. So God is not a man that lies. He stands by his word. So if he tells you, if you do this, I'll do that, you obligate God to bless you. But the first part is you have to know what the word is. You have to know what he says. So you can't live by the word. You can't live by the Bible, and you can't live by God when you don't know what he says. So reading the word helps you be able to really live by it. The love that you have in your heart for God is a good thing, but to know God has to come from the knowledge of his word. If not, they have what you call a knowledge of God according to zeal. That means you only know about him according to what you feel in your emotions in your heart. But if you really want him to get down in your soul, for that word to cut through your bone and marrow, you got to read it. You got to read it and study it. And then before you know it, at a time and a moment when you need it, it'll be right there and you can grab a hold of it, and it'll be what you base your decisions off. And then, as I said, you obligate God because he's not a man that lies. In fact, he watches over his word to see that it is performed. He's waiting. God is waiting for the opportunity to bless you. He's waiting for you to trust him with something that's bigger than you. Let's read another passage or read in another area. When I look here, I'm looking in Genesis. And this is during the time where God had commanded Abraham. He wasn't Abraham then, he was renamed. His name was Abram. And he had commanded him to leave his land that he knew, leave his father's household, to leave everything he knew behind. That's like I left Massachusetts. I didn't know a soul in Boston, in Georgia. And I heard my heart say, this is where I want you to go. And I came here with my children, not even knowing how to get to the grocery store. But I trusted that the Lord would see me through because I heard it in my spirit to come here. The one thing I knew for sure is that I knew I didn't know what was in front of me, but it was a chance that I'd learn something new. I knew what was behind me, and I knew what I could go back to if what was ahead of me didn't work out. But I trusted God with it, and he's been faithful to me, even when I haven't done my part at times. So this here scripture that I want to read is when God is making a promise to Abraham. He says in Genesis 15, verse 1, he says, after this, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. So he promised Abraham that he would be with him in this wilderness, in this place that you're going where you know no one. You're going with your wife and your nephew and you don't know anyone, but I'll be with you if you just follow me, if you just trust me. And even for those of you who don't know, Abraham didn't have a child, and his wife Sarah, whose name was Sarai at the time, God renamed them after he blessed them. He didn't have a child, and he was old in age, and his wife was barren. She couldn't have children. And God promised him, I will give you a heir to the land that I'm promising you. He promised him that your descendants would be more than the sands in the sea on the beach that you can count, more than the sands of the land. And Abraham wondered, how could my descendants be that? And I don't even have a son born to me, but God promised it to him. But you know what? He missed the mark because we are human and we do make mistakes. And he let his faith in God waver. And as he started getting old, he let his wife entice him to take a maidservant and have a child with her because she felt that she was getting too old and that God couldn't bless them with a child because she was up in age and so was her husband. But God came back with his promise. See, along with trusting God and having faith in him, it's going to require some patience. It's going to require us to wait through some things sometimes. And God's not limited by our shortcomings, our age, or our lack of knowledge, or our lack of language, or lack of ability. Do not limit God. He don't need no help from us. And in his later years, when he was 100 years old, he was blessed with a child through his wife who was 90. So I just want to show you that. And I also want to bring to your attention that once he did have a son, this was the son Isaac. And God told him later to take the son and take him up to the mountain and sacrifice him. Now imagine that the same act that God did by giving his only son Jesus, before he did that selfless act, he required it of Abraham. And guess what? Without a second thought, Abraham got his son, got the boy, and headed up to the mountain and told the boy, come with me. We're going to offer a sacrifice to God. The little boy looked at him and said, well, Daddy, where's the lamb? What sacrifice we going to make? Because I don't see an animal. In those days, they sacrificed animals. And the little boy even knew, like, Daddy, what we going to sacrifice? Daddy never told him. He just trusted God. Now, imagine that type of faith, though, that you're going to take your only son and sacrifice him. But why? Because he's seen that God had promised and kept and promised and kept. So that's how your faith is built. It's built on you getting that feeling of God having a track record, that he never fails. Every time he says he's going to come through, he comes through. He may not come when you call him, but he's always on time. He never misses the mark for you. So I want to submit to you, when we look at Hebrews, it says faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we don't see. So what does that mean? Faith is confidence in what we hope for. Okay, I'm in a doctorate degree program. I hope for the degree. But right now, I'm at the end of the program. I only have 2 classes left. I'm in one of the last 2 classes and the school is closed or